Hi everyone, Jay Whitner here with Kickstarter Coaching and our internet TV show Crowdfunding Coverage. In Crowdfunding Coverage, we do a quick recap of what happens each month in the crowdfunding space. So today we're going to be talking about February of 2015. We'll talk about the news first, and then we'll follow up with 5 big campaigns that happened in February. The big campaigns totaled about $16 million that closed out in February. And the largest is Exploding Kittens, believe it or not. They raised almost $9 million on Kickstarter. So first we'll go into the news. We think of crowdfunding as being for small organizations, startups, but I noticed that in February, General Electric went to IndieGoGo to finance development of one of their products. This was actually a GE subsidiary that did this. But really quite interesting to see the larger corporate America involved with some of the crowdfunding activities. Next up, we have some news on the equity crowdfunding area. As you might be aware, the Jobs Act that was passed a few years ago is still waiting for action by the SEC to get the rules all approved for equity crowdfunding for Main Street, some people call it. As a result of the delays, many states are doing their own state-level equity crowdfunding regulations. And in the news in February was Texas. 3 crowdfunding websites opened up in Texas for equity crowdfunding. And this seems to be a growing trend. And I've lost track at the moment of how many states it is. I think it's 15 or 20 states that have already set forth their own private state-level regulations for equity crowdfunding as a workaround while we wait for the SEC. While the majority of crowdfunding projects come off and do their project and ship out their rewards, there is a percentage of them that have problems with their campaign, and in some cases the project is never done. IndieGoGo has been doing some experimentation on and effectively offering insurance to backers for campaigns to cover the possibility that the campaign may not occur. The insurance is rather expensive, depending on various conditions, maybe 10 to 20% of the amount that you pay for your reward. And they've only done this with a few test campaigns, but we'll see how this unfolds in the future. Will insurance be a material part of the crowdfunding universe or not? In the news, there was a lot of coverage about this Exploding Kitten campaign. We'll talk about the campaign a little bit later on. But what was really covered in the news was the amount of backers. It had more backers than any campaign has ever had so far. It also raised more money than any other game, and there's a lot of different types of games on Kickstarter, tabletop games, and video games, and so forth. Not only have the most backers, but it raised more money than any other game. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in our broadcast. Also, big news from Pebble. As you may be aware, Pebble held the distinction for quite some time as being the largest Kickstarter campaign in history, the largest crowdfunding campaign in history. They just came out with a new campaign for a new model of their smartwatch, which has blown away basically all the records that had been done. I think they hit their goal in about half an hour. And when this article was written, they'd raised $9 million. It's hard to report on these really rapidly changing situations. As I speak to you right now, right before I started this broadcast, they're up to $16 million, which is the biggest crowdfunding campaign in history, and they have 3 weeks left in their campaign. So who knows where the Pebble campaign will end up. We'll talk about that more later. Also, big news on the IndieGoGo front with a campaign that's running there, and this has to do with beekeeping and hunting. They've come up with a new design sort of where you can harvest the honey from the bees without disturbing the bees and getting stung and other issues. This already is the second biggest campaign on IndieGoGo, and it is very close to being the biggest. So while we're talking primarily about February, and these news items are from February, in March, it has every appearance that this campaign is going to be the biggest one in IndieGoGo history, And the Pebble Watch campaign will close out being the biggest campaign in Kickstarter history. So we're going to talk about some interesting campaigns. We're going to talk about 6 of them. The size range is roughly $700,000 to $16 million, the campaigns that we'll talk about. The length of the videos is 1:43 to approximately 4 minutes in length, which is fairly typical. Usually we recommend 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, maybe 3 minutes for videos. In terms of the updates, there's a really wide range this time, from a low of 5 updates to 101. Now, one thing I would urge you when you're thinking about your updates and your campaigns is you want to keep the people informed, but you don't want to bury them in email. So when you do an update on your Kickstarter campaign, it effectively sends out an email to all of the backers. So these people, their campaign's just finished. They've already sent out 101 emails to their backers. I don't recommend this. I think it can be an annoyance to the backers. Campaign length. These big campaigns range from 30 to 35 days in length. Very tight range there of length. And this ties in with the wisdom of the moment, which is 30 days or so is a good length of time for your campaigns. And reward levels. 3 was the low, which seems kind of skimpy, to 29, which seems kind of hard to manage. I tend to think in terms of 10 or 12, something like that, is maybe a good amount, depending, of course, on your campaign and what it's all about. So on to the campaigns themselves. The first one is the moment case. This is a case to use with your iPhone, and it's in support of photography. So it supports different lenses, and there's different, like a physical shutter and a handle to hold on to your iPhone a little bit better when you're taking your pictures. So some of the unique aspects of this campaign, which raised about $700,000, is they have a case that's exclusive to the Kickstarter backers. Now, that may be surprising to you because, hey, it's a Kickstarter campaign. Of course it's your Kickstarter backer. But many, many campaigns now that are running on Kickstarter are the launches of whole new companies. So while this company will probably make a whole different line of cases that are kind of like this, one of the cases will be just for backers. So it's a little bit of a rarity thing, a unique thing. They also had some gifts, which are nice sort of mini videos to explain things that take a little bit of extra horsepower to get the point across. And this campaign was Dragon certified, which you may not be familiar with. There's a company that basically looks at what you're doing, looks at what you're producing, looks into the production, everything, and says, yes, it's very, very likely you'll be able to get this thing into production and deliver on time and everything. So this certification is of interest to the sophisticated backer who's maybe putting in a substantial amount of money into the campaign to make sure that you have a good chance to deliver on time. Our next campaign. This is Shadowrun Hong Kong. This is a game, of course, that raised a little bit over $1 million, and it had some interesting aspects to it. One of the rewards is an e-novel. So they actually wrote a book in support of the campaign. They have a lot of high-profile testimonials from people in the gaming community. These people are good, they're well qualified, they make good games, that kind of thing. But perhaps the most interesting aspect of this campaign is it was fully funded before they started their Kickstarter. And they talked about this in their video. They already had their staff, they already had their timing, they already had the budget. They were going to make this thing, whatever happened. The whole purpose of the Kickstarter funding is to augment the game. So this is an interesting approach and certainly served them very, very well, raising over $1 million on Kickstarter. Next we have Neo. This is sort of the next generation universal remote. It had a lot of interesting features. For example, multiple people in the house using the thing. It recognizes the hands of the different people that use it, so it shows you what you want to control. It's not just for like your TV. You can also do home automation with this device. They had a couple of different early bird levels, so the early backers get a special discount. They had different colors that they offered their product in. This is a good idea, if you can support it without increasing your cost too much, to give more choice to your backers. And something I don't remember seeing before, they had they were going to engrave the serial numbers on the different devices And they put a big price premium on the first 10 devices, or I guess 9. Serial numbers 1 through 9 was quite a bit of extra money if you wanted your device to be one of those first 9 devices. Next we have a board game, tabletop game by Conan. So this game is of course about Conan the Barbarian that you might have heard of in the past. They raised over $3 million for this game. And some of the special aspects of their campaign, they had a lot of optional purchasing. Lots of extra things you could buy to augment and add to your game if you so chose. Another thing they had was lots of supplemental video, explaining the game, the rules, how you play it. And something I've seen more of recently is they had a video of the entire game, so you could watch people play the whole game to get a sense of what exactly it was. And this game was play tested by over 500 people. So I guess the takeaway from that is, they've really studied it, they've worked out the bugs and incorporated suggestions and enhanced the game. So anyway, this game, over $3 million, Conan. Next we have a really interesting campaign called Exploding Kittens. This is a card game with a special deck of cards. That's the basic reward of the campaign. Hope that you all are sitting down. This card game raised $8.8 million. This is, as I mentioned previously, the largest game campaign in crowdfunding history. And I can't really explain to you how they turned this game into basically $9 million. I wish I understood it. They had several stretch goals, which is fairly common. They had a thing that if you just wanted more decks, just sort of multiply the reward amount, and they would send you more decks. It was very simple if you wanted to get more than one deck of these cards. They had a lot of self-deprecating humor in their campaign, the video, poking fun at themselves and poking fun at their game. And there's nothing wrong with the game. It looks like it might be amusing, and for it to be successful on Kickstarter doesn't surprise me a bit. That this thing could raise a couple $100,000 would not be, unusual at all. To raise $9 million, I'm still not sure how exactly they accomplished that. I hope to get the time to look into that a little bit more thoroughly. The last campaign we want to talk about today is the new Pebble watch. As you may know, Pebble is old-time Kickstarter royalty. For a long time, their prior campaign held the #1 spot. This new campaign has shattered everybody's records, including their old records. This slide here says they've done like 15 some odd million dollars. Right before I started recording, I looked it up. Now they're at 16 something million dollars with 3 weeks to go. So this is already the biggest crowdfunding campaign in history, and is poised to become huge, maybe $20 million plus campaign by the time it's done. A couple of interesting things about this campaign. They're offering the watch in different colors, giving more choice to the backers. They have one called the Steel that has different case, different band, it's thinner, has longer battery life, so sort of different levels of products in addition to different colors. They have special engraving on the watches with one type of engraving reserved for people who back their first and their second campaign. Becomes, I guess, a little bit of a collectible. Another cool thing is they put in there you can get a reward at any time you want until the thing ships. So if they experience delays, for example, and you decide you're done waiting, just let them know. They'll send you a refund. So that's very friendly. But the big news is the biggest crowdfunding campaign ever. $16 million in climbing with 3 weeks to go. That's it for our report covering February of 2015. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back in roughly a month to talk about what happens in March with the final numbers for the Pebble campaign and the Honeycomb campaign that we talked about today. And we'll see you then. Take care.